A couple of black freshmen checking into their dorms at OU. They're ready for school to start. According to minority recruiters, this scene isn't repeated often enough. OU and the state's other colleges have been under a federal court order to attract more black students, teachers, and administrators. So far, the university has fallen far short of its goals. Recruiters think they can reach their target by signing up 325 new black students this fall. But finding enough black teachers will be a different story.
In the faculty goals, the hill may be a little too much for us to climb. In order to meet full compliance in this year, we will need to retain all the black faculty that we now have while adding 13 more. And that is a difficult task. In fact, I don't think our turnover is sufficient, nor is our recruitment and attraction sufficient to do that in this year.
No one knows for sure how the court will act if Oklahoma doesn't meet its minority recruitment goals. One possibility would be for the court to order all federal money withdrawn from state institutions. That could cost the state millions of dollars. Scott Wallace, Action 4 at OU.
Thank you very much for coming.
This is the worst garbage pickup system I have ever seen, and I've lived all over the world, and I'm ashamed of it. And I'd like to know why we can't go to an individual or private concern if you don't have the funds to keep these trucks running.
There's no reason. We have the same equipment as a private contractor's got, and there's no reason why sanitation service won't work in this city if management makes it work.
And also, we're the only city, any small municipality around that you can check that it doesn't pick up twice a week. So I don't see any excuse for this city not to be able to pick up religiously once a week.
The dock area at Lake Hefner is secured by a fence and the gates are locked. The only people who get in are people with a key. But apparently vandals have had no problem getting in and ransacking expensive sailboats for stereos, tools, and other sailing gear. Keith and Sally Sackett's sailboat was vandalized and about 50 others. The sailboat owners are angry, frustrated, and they're going to organize to do something about the problem.
What we're trying to do, I believe Saturday morning, we're going to get together out here and see if we can't get some type of action as far as hiring our own security or finding out what responsibilities are for people out here that are supposed to be maintaining the dock area and these boats.
The boat owners feel the lake rangers could do a better job patrolling the area, especially since their headquarters are only a few yards away. The boat owners have planned a meeting for this Saturday morning at 7:30 to let the rangers know how they feel. The boat owners say the vandalism occurs every year, and there's just no excuse for it. Bella Shaw, Action 4 at Lake Hefner.
Staff, and he will be arraigned this afternoon in Flagstaff. We will also be seeking federal charges against him for assaulting a federal officer. Last Sunday on June 13th, he was involved in a gun battle with an FBI agent and Dallas, Texas police. At that time, he was driving a Corvette, which he had which he later abandoned that day, and which we determined he had bought in Scottsdale, Arizona.
No one seems to know when the Drexell Pharmacy first opened its doors in this sleepy northwest Oklahoma City neighborhood. But owner Martine Terrell has had to tell the soda fountain regulars that those doors will close permanently come September. The store's lease on life and on this building is over.
Like 2 vanilla ice creams.
It makes me feel like the neighborhood, the feeling of a neighborhood is dying, and I don't think that's right. And a family type situation here and the warmth here, that it's not going to be here. I could trust them to walk up here by themselves for an ice cream cone, and they won't be able to. They'll have to cross busy streets to go get an ice cream cone.
A lot of ice cream has passed over this counter, but Sundays will soon give way to paper clips and typing paper. Drexell's Pharmacy will be converted to office space, and the corner drug will become a memory.
I've seen them grow up, and, people pass away and new ones come, and over this period of time. And it's, that part of it's really the sad part about it, about leaving it. After all, when you've done it this long, it feels like second home, really.
He's probably filled 1,001 prescriptions in his 20-odd years of standing behind this counter. After closing in September, Martine Terrell will retire.
Bonnie,
But if satisfaction can be measured by the smiles of neighborhood kids or a simple thanks for a hastily filled prescription, then Martine Terrell and the corner drug should be wonderfully filled. Tony Stizza, Action 4.
For Marty Engelmeyer, the drive home from work isn't what it used to be. Last December, Marty was laid off at General Motors, where he made $10 an hour. Now he's a cook at McDonald's for $3.50. So for Marty, the American dream is slipping away.
First time to own a house, and I thought I was on top of the world. Get laid off, and that's it. It's gone.
Have you looked for another job besides McDonald's?
Oh, yes. But they say, you work for General Motors, forget it.
Why?
Take the time of training us or something like this, and when General Motors calls back, we'll probably go back.
Are you ready to go back? You looking forward to it?
Definitely. I mean, if I could get on tomorrow, I would be happy. I might not be able to lose the house then.
Things are just as bad across the street at Bob McKee's house. Bob has already sold his home. Like Marty, he has less than 10 years seniority. That means he's only entitled to 6 weeks compensation from the union fund. So Bob and his wife are taking their children, 4-year-old Brian and 18-month-old Brandy, back to his home state of Indiana.
I can work back home, and that's what I plan on doing, and my wife's trying to transfer back up there. She works for the government, and she's trying to transfer to either Muncie or Indianapolis. And then we'll just live up there and put our stuff in storage and just go from there.
Bob McKee and Marty Engelmeyer want to go back to work for General Motors. A GM spokesman told us the company hopes to rehire 2,500 workers starting September 27th. But for that to happen, car sales are going to have to pick up. Bill Ross, Action 4 at the General Motors plant.
The new headquarters is located on the ground floor of the FAA control tower at Will Rogers World Airport. Air traffic supervisors have been busy making sure all the new equipment works properly. In the radar room, controllers will be monitoring all aircraft within a 35-mile radius of Oklahoma City. This includes all planes, both commercial and private, plus military aircraft from Tinker. Controllers are said to undergo a lot of stress, but the FAA chief thinks the new facility will help alleviate some of it.
I'm not a psychologist, but I think it goes without reason that your surroundings certainly have effect on how you view your work, and we're more comfortable here. We have more room. We have better equipment to work with. It's more reliable. So I think these are all positive factors to improvement in that area. I might comment that stress is a relative thing. I think most of us doing this work today enjoy it a lot, and the stress is not quite as big as some people may play it.
The new communication system is also impressive, with equipment that records all transactions between the pilot and the controllers. A huge computer stores all the information. $4.5 million was spent to purchase only the most modern equipment available. This coming Saturday at midnight, the old air traffic control headquarters at Tinker will shut down, and then these men will assume the responsibility for air traffic. And then Will Rogers will become the permanent home for air traffic controllers. Bella Shaw, Action 4 at Will Rogers World Airport.
Quick kick. After all that, we're still ready to smile. Do that. The Department of Transportation, also by the finished table.
Oh, it seems fun. Maybe it'll make me get in shape and stay there. Maybe I'll continue to do this after I finish. Today, I hope so. Hope to keep doing it every day at home now. Get finished at it. I walk quite a bit, but never for an hour at a time anyway.
There have been a lot of reported sightings of Douglas Dixon, but so far, none of those tips have paid off. The command post for locating the youngster was moved to the 3rd floor of the police headquarters. That way, investigators can follow up on leads more quickly.
Of course, we have continuing telephone leads that come in, as you have observed in the incident room that we have here. And what it amounts to is a matter of going through the leads that are coming in, looking at them here. If they appear to be substantial enough for us to send somebody out on, we do have officers in the field that are assigned to us that we've got checking the leads.
Haig is going back up there. It's necessary to get the helicopter up.
While we were at the command post, police received a tip that a boy matching Dixon's description was walking along a railroad track just south of Highway 66. Investigators felt it was a very good lead. A police helicopter and 2 detectives were dispatched to comb the area for the boy. It wasn't an easy job. The location had thick woods and heavy underbrush. The aerial spotters flew at treetop level until they had covered every inch. No luck. The detectives on foot came up empty-handed too. The investigators say they're not about to give up. There will be more phone calls and new leads. Detectives can only hope the next tip will be the one that leads them to Douglas Dixon. Mark O'Neill, Action 4, Northwest Oklahoma City.
Well, in reading between the lines, I might say that it's my assumption that Secretary Haig offered his resignation one time too many. There were a number of rumors throughout Washington over the past few months that each time the Secretary would have a disagreement with someone on the White House staff, or if perhaps even with the president that over some foreign policy issue, he would offer his resignation. And that would be the way that he would respond to that and to deal with it. And evidently that's what happened in this case with regard to the gas pipeline, the Russian gas pipeline.
Well, I was surprised especially that it came in the midst of such a critical situation in the Middle East. I would have thought the timing would have been handled a little differently. But on the other hand, we've known for a long time that there were strains within the administration and between Haig and others. It would be an understatement to say that he has an adequate ego and that he's somewhat abrasive to work with. And I think there have been problems ever since the assassination attempt and his famous "I'm in charge here" statement at the White House.
Workers will be busy this summer, scraping deadly asbestos off the Putnam City High School auditorium walls. If the carcinogen had been removed a year ago, the contractor would have been forced to store the asbestos in special bags sealed inside heavy-duty drums. The material would have ended up with other hazardous waste at a special disposal site. But a year ago, the federal government reclassified asbestos as a solid waste. The relaxed rule means that asbestos removed from Newcastle High School last week can legally be buried inside plastic bags at this approved sanitary landfill near Newcastle. Most Oklahomans wouldn't want to have a proven cancer-causing substance buried in their backyard, but the state health department says the new procedure is safe.
If you think about something that placed in contact with water will dissolve and then migrate with the water, can cause much more of a hazard once buried than something that does not dissolve like the asbestos. And once buried, hopefully it will remain buried.
Is asbestos safe to bury?
If burial of waste is safe, it certainly would be one of the safer things to bury.
The health department requires landfills to keep records of where asbestos is buried. That should prevent future neighborhoods from being built on the same site. Scott Wallace, Action 4 near Newcastle.
I think there are differences between some of these things that are going on and things like just the outright invasion of Afghanistan by a foreign power determined to impose its will on another country. We have a situation in Lebanon in which there was a force, the PLO, literally a government within a government and with its own army. And they had pursued aggression themselves across a border by way of rocket firing and artillery barrages. But the situation is so complicated, and the goals that we would like to pursue are what are dictating our conduct right now.
The body of 50-year-old Josie McBride was found inside a camper in a southeast Oklahoma City junkyard. A neighborhood teenager found the woman's body. An assistant state medical examiner said she had been dead 1 to 3 days. An autopsy will be performed to determine the exact cause of death. Police are treating McBride's death as a homicide. Officers are also searching for the woman's 19-year-old mentally retarded son who lived with her in the camper. Authorities arrested a man who lived next door to the junkyard as a material witness in the case. He was taken to Oklahoma County Jail for questioning. And there was yet another murder in the city. 41-year-old Kumkam Pimpachan was shot 4 times with a small caliber pistol. He died at St. Anthony's Hospital Thursday morning. Reports are that Kamwang Borabun of Los Angeles came to the victim's home at 900 Northwest 34th. The 2 men argued over the use of the victim's car, and Borabun allegedly shot Pimpachan. Borabun is being held in the city jail on a murder complaint. And this day of tragedy included an apparent suicide. An Oklahoma City man jumped from a 9th-story window at the Veterans Administration Hospital about 3 o'clock. The man was killed on impact. His name has not been released, pending notification of his relatives. Bill Ross, Action 4.
The theme for Norman's 4th of July celebration was Life Be In It. One of the highlights of the day included participants who haven't had much experience with life. It's called a baby crawl. The object is to persuade an infant to crawl about 20 feet from one parent to the other and then return to the starting point. It's not as simple as it sounds. Angie Shetley finished the course in 47 seconds. Not a land speed record, but good enough to collect a $100 savings bond. Most of the other babies failed to finish in the money. However, it was a chance to meet others their own age, and perhaps for a few, the race provided the spark for a lifelong romance. Scott Wallace, Action 4 in Norman. I'm Scott Wallace. Penn Square Bank in Oklahoma City has gone out of business. Federal officials declared the bank insolvent just a few hours ago. Bank employees are busy transferring business records, getting ready for the government takeover. Penn Square Bank's financial troubles began after it suffered losses and substantial loans made for energy-related investments. The bank will open its doors this morning with a new name. It will be called the Deposit Insurance National Bank of Oklahoma City. Depositors with accounts of less than $100,000 will be assured of getting all their money back. Larger deposits will be considered claims against the failed bank. Federal officials say arrangements have been made to permit the continued clearance of checks drawn on Penn Square Bank. The FDIC will expect borrowers to continue repayment of their loans in accordance with the terms of their loan agreements. Any questions concerning the bank closing will be answered by federal officials in Oklahoma City this morning. Stay tuned to Action 4 AM for complete details. This is Scott Wallace, Action 4 News.
In view of our heavily involvement in the oil business, that we're probably experiencing more problems than some banks.
Last Friday, the chairman of the board of Penn Square Bank in Oklahoma City spoke about his bank's troubles. But matters were worse than Bill Jennings had said. During the 4th of July holiday, bank examiners determined things had gotten out of hand. By Monday night, Penn Square Bank was no more. The controller of the currency declared the bank, which had more than $500 million in assets, insolvent. Bank management met with FDIC officials Monday night, while bank employees were called in to hear the bad news. Federal employees began moving in their own supplies. The bank has been renamed the Insurance National Bank of Oklahoma City, and the FDIC will process the bank's accounts until the institution can be closed. Deposits of less than $100,000 are fully insured. Deposits of greater amounts will be considered as claims against the bank. Penn Square Bank had been heavily involved in oil and gas financing. 80% of the bank's outstanding loans were to energy-related companies. As the oil industry slumped, the bank's financial situation deteriorated. Shortly after 7:30 Tuesday morning, the chairman of the FDIC, Bill Isaac, held a press conference at the Hilton Inn. Isaac went to great pains to reassure bank customers that their money was safe.
If the initial demands for funds are heavy, if there are long lines of depositors, we will keep the bank open 24 hours a day if necessary in order to meet those demands.
Despite Isaac's pledge their funds were safe, bank customers began lining up before 9 this morning. The lines have remained constant throughout the day because these people want their money in their own hands. In Oklahoma City, I'm Bill Ross for the Nightly Business Report.
One of the first pieces of business for the newly reconvened legislature was a joint session in the House chamber. The occasion was an address from Ohio's U.S. Senator John Glenn. There was little effort to hide the political nature of Glenn's visit. The former astronaut will likely vie for the Democratic presidential nomination in 1984. He told legislators how lucky they were that Oklahoma was escaping the problems of the rest of the country. But he said many of those problems would catch up with Oklahoma. The first news he heard last night when he arrived was the situation at Penn Square Bank.
Last night I arrived here, flipped on the TV in my hotel room just as a special news broadcast was coming on announcing that at 7:05 last night, Penn Square had been declared insolvent. Why? Because 80% of their loans were in the energy business, in oil loans. Now, that's something that I think is going to reverberate around this country. And so we find that one of the major banks investing in energy matters, so critical to you here in Oklahoma, has now been declared insolvent.
Glenn attacked the Reagan administration along the same lines other Democrats have. He said big companies are getting away without paying their share of taxes while tax breaks that encourage new jobs are being eliminated. And Glenn says that under the right leadership, a working America can turn itself around. Charles Schnitzer, Action 4 at the state capitol.
Up until now, Oklahoma has escaped the full impact.
If American troops do go in by helicopter and landing craft, they will be from the 6th Fleet in the Mediterranean. In this file footage, those troops train for just the sort of operation that is now being proposed. The men would land in full battle gear, and the commanders would hope that they wouldn't need it. This would be the second time President Eisenhower sent troops ashore in 1958.
I believe that the presence of the United States forces now being sent to Lebanon will have a stabilizing effect, which will help to preserve the independence and integrity of Lebanon.
President Eisenhower ordered the 5,000 Marines ashore in July 1958 at the request of the President of Lebanon, and the 6th Fleet's job then was to guard the elected government. There had been a violent revolution in Iraq the day before, and one was threatened in Lebanon. The Marines landed, there was no revolution, and all of them were pulled out in October.
Soldiers relaxed somewhat today as the ceasefire held. The blockade of West Beirut eased a bit, too. Travel was a bit less restricted. The city was quiet most of the day. But the ceasefire, the 5th one in Beirut, did not last long. Late in the day, Israeli artillery resumed pounding Palestinian-controlled neighborhoods in West Beirut. From a hillside east of the city, the Israelis fired on the neighborhood where PLO leader Yasser Arafat has his command headquarters.
Gunmen are still roaming the streets. Many have moved into areas that till now have been mainly populated by civilians.
I followed the code of conduct. And then I decided, or not decided, it was just a prudent thing to do, that I would not do or say anything that would embarrass either the armed forces, the United States, or Italy. And I followed through on that.
Question first because it leads, the answer leads into the first question. We didn't
relieve. In other words, there's an ancillary question I would...
Several weeks into the examination, the regional administrator notified the Washington office that potentially serious problems were being uncovered in the bank. Also, the bank's activities and condition had begun to be the subject of attention in the press and in the financial marketplace.
Question first because it leads, the answer leads into the first question. We didn't